Okay, so welcome to the PowerShell Basics. You are in a great place, my friend. This is PowerShell for plebeians. That is normal, everyday people. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to understand how to code in binary. This is for people that just want to learn how to do more and to get more out of PowerShell. We're going to talk about a lot of different things in this series. But in this series, this particular video, we're just going to talk about two things. What is PowerShell? And the two environments that you'll use while using PowerShell. Okay, so we're going to talk about several different things in this tutorial. First, we're going to talk about why you should even use PowerShell. And then we're going to look at some of the chaos that you can do in the console. And finally, we'll finish up with a brief discussion of the PowerShell integrated scripting environment, or as I like to say, ice, ice, baby. So let's look at this. Okay, so the first reason you should use PowerShell is because it's powerful. There's a reason why it's called PowerShell. You can do a lot in PowerShell. And the good thing is you don't have to have a lot of experience and you don't have to be daunted by the command line. You can do basically anything in the PowerShell command line that you can do in the traditional Windows command line. And so, for that reason, I think that, PowerShell is something that you should look into, especially if you're an administrator. In addition to that, you can create scripts. So you can, automate mundane tasks. You can execute commands on remote computers. You can do a bunch of different things. And once you learn how to become nimble with the with PowerShell, the commandlets as they call them, once you learn how to understand the help system, PowerShell opens up a whole new world of opportunity. It's extremely powerful, and that's why you should use it. The second thing is the help system kicks ass. The PowerShell help system is absolutely amazing. You do not need to Google. You do not need to even buy a book. The book is built into PowerShell. And I'm going to show you in a future video how you can get everything you need out of the help system and how to actually interpret the syntax of the help system so you can read it. Because PowerShell actually teaches you how to use itself in a very intuitive fashion. For example, all the commandlets follow a verb-noun format. And so you might have get-service. What do you think that does? It gets a service. What about get-date? Well, that shows you the date. And it's very intuitive, and we'll talk about that a little later. The second reason why you should learn PowerShell is because it'll freaking make you valuable, right? There's always a need for people that know PowerShell. And adding that to your resume will just make you that much more valuable as an employee. It'll give you a huge advantage over the guy who only knows the GUI. Knowing PowerShell, you'll know the GUI and PowerShell, which is great. And the last reason is because it's the future. And what I mean by that is Windows is pushing all their products to use PowerShell. From Windows Server 2012 R2 to Windows Server 2016, which is in a beta state right now. And even, Exchange 2013, SQL Server 2012 R2. I can go on and on. IIS 8.5, Active Directory, Office 365, Windows Azure. All of these services rely on PowerShell. And in fact, many of the GUI applications include a PowerShell commandlet window where you can actually see the PowerShell commands that were executed in the background. In addition to that, Windows Server 2012 allows you to install it without a GUI. It's called core mode. And this is proof that Microsoft is really getting serious about going the PowerShell route. So enough of my blabber. Let's actually take a look at PowerShell in action. Okay, so I'm running Windows Server 2012 R2, and I have my server set up as a domain controller in VMware, and that way I have access to more of the commandlets, and it'll enable me to show you more of the features that PowerShell allows. So you can look at my video on how to set up PowerShell, how to set up VMware with Windows Server 2012 R2. But for now, let's go ahead and log in. All right. And so the first thing you want to do is figure out where do you get PowerShell, and it's very easy. In the bottom left corner of the screen, you'll see that there's a blue PowerShell button. If you click this blue button, PowerShell opens. But that's not what I want to do. If you right-click the blue button, you'll have an option to run the console as an administrator or run the integrated scripting environment as an administrator. We're going to go ahead and start with the console, which is basically like a command prompt on steroids. Let me show you. I'm going to go ahead and type cd space backspace just to change to the root directory. Now, this is PowerShell. This is PowerShell. Let me clear the screen. And you might think, well, what do you do? Where do you get started? And this is why it's so intimidating. People don't really know what to do. What can you do with PowerShell? You can do a lot, and you're going to learn a lot. In fact, by the end of the series, you're going to become a PowerShell master. But for now, I just want to show you the important thing is that you can read the screen. That may sound kind of silly, but you need to be able to distinguish between a backtick, a single quote, also double quotes, and a few others. Let me show you. The backtick is usually on the tilde key in the upper left corner of your keyboard. And you have the single tick, which is on the next to the enter key. Usually it shares the same key as the quote button. Double quotes. You also need to know the braces, parentheses, and brackets. Braces, parentheses, and brackets. And these all are by your backspace key. Now, if you can't see these, it's really important that you change your font. And so what I like to do is I usually, I'll right-click the title bar. And then, once I right-click that, I'll go to Properties. And then in here, you can go to Font. You can actually bump up the font size. And it's also going to bump up the size of your window, which is fine. You just want to make sure you're not scrolling horizontally.